Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sacred Anarchies, a post-church podcast for another week of me
Blah
and
blah
Mary
blah.
and our thoughts.
Wow, that was a hard sell.
I know. I
Wow.
couldn't think of anything. Well, I'm always giving you these like huge introductions.
Yeah.
And so I decided to try and say something else. But look, I'm so used to giving you a massive introduction
Yeah.
that
Why don't you just dial down the self-promotion? That was
I
just
can't
way too
really
much.
say, I can't really say it.
How are you?
So I'm okay. I mean, still locked down, still waiting and looking forward to that April 21 date when we're going to start hopefully to see a little bit of an ease. But I mean, who knows, right? Because it all depends on how the vaccinations are rolling out and how it's going with schools opening up. But you know, just Groundhog's Day, like we say all the time.
Indeed. Every day is like Sunday. I'm just going to keep quoting Morrissey. It's the one safe Morrissey quote.
It's so funny. Like, I'm looking out the window right now and it is gray. It is the middle of the day and it is gray and it is dark. And I'm still getting used to these daily gray days in Britain. I mean, not that it's
Yeah.
not sunny and not that we don't have beautiful skies, we do. But I just feel like when I go outside, because we go outside most days for a
Of
nice
course.
walk.
Yeah.
And when it's like this outside, I feel like the environment is aggressing towards me. I just feel like it's attacking me and I don't like how I feel. And I just want to
Mm.
go back inside to be protected from these gray skies.
Well, that's interesting.
It's
Yeah.
a
And I
very
mean,
strange
it
sensation.
the if you think about it, this time last year when we were entering into lockdown,
Hmm.
the weather was entirely different.
It was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous and remained so for a long time, which is the challenge with living in Britain is the
Hmm.
unpredictability of the weather. It's not that it's terrible all the time. It's just unpredictable and you never know
Hmm.
what you'll get and you can't really expect too much. I go for walks with my brother,
Yeah.
and my brother keeps believing the weather report on his phone, and
As
twice.
do I. I
Yeah, you
pray to
see,
the
I
weather.
don't. So I wear a raincoat every day now, regardless of whatever. And yesterday we went out, and he showed up in just a bomber jacket, And
Hmm.
I'm like, "Are you sure about this?" He's like, "Yeah, the weather said it's going to." And halfway into our walk, we had to shelter under a tree that actually had no leaves in it, so he got totally drenched, which wasn't funny. Well, it was funny because he had a good moan about that, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm not going to wear a raincoat until we have some really consistent, clear sunshine days. None of this, because it's sunny one minute, and it's like that Sting song, All Four Seasons in One Day. It was a song about his daughter, but it's also a British analogy. So anyway, that was a
And
great chat. See you next week.
it's a really good lead in, just kidding, to our topic today, which we're just going to talk briefly about, just as kind of like I guess, an end cap on these 6 weeks of deconstruction conversations that we've been having.
Yeah.
And we actually have a very cool month or so planned for our podcasts coming up here. We have got some really cool guests that we're going to be talking to over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So I'm really excited
Yeah.
about that. But today we're going to talk about something briefly that you coined a few days ago that I was like, we are definitely podcasting on that, even though I don't know that we can define it really well or talk about it super intelligibly. But I definitely want to throw this phrase and concept out there, which is your idea of the evangelical hangover.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were just having a general discussion about many of the things that we've been seeing and exploring
Yeah.
in the last few
Mhm.
weeks as we've been having these conversations about deconstruction and where people are at. And I think I mean, it's no big deal, but it just sort of dropped into my mind that really what it seems to me is people are basically experiencing the equivalent of a hangover
Yeah.
from their imbibing of a particular religious ideology.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's a really heavy hangover. and for other people it's just a little bit of a headache, and the light's a little bit glaring. But I think I don't know, I was looking for a sort of an emotional descriptor for all of the stuff that's gone on, because as you know, I've said, we've said a few times, it's more than just a theological conversation. It's a whole life encounter.
Yeah, it is.
The impact of those experiences is on the whole person and the whole body. And I just thought, to me, it just feels like they're dealing with a hangover. They can't shake off the after effects of a really rough night of imbibing a particular Christian ideology. I don't know. I'm not a drinker, so I can't stretch the analogy too far.
Interesting metaphor for you to choose, and not being a drinker. But I mean, I think you're so right, because when you think about our religious experiences, I mean, it to some degree, it is a self-indulgence. We are having ecstatic experiences. We are kind of riding high. There's lots of endorphins and serotonin that's flowing as a result from our engaging and,
Yeah.
some of the transcendental behavior. It's very emotive. It's very communal. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel accepted. It makes us feel important because we're engaging, with the high being and deity. I mean, there are so many things that we can get quote unquote drunk off of when it comes to Christianity, especially when it comes to evangelicalism, because the evangelicals are the one who really, emphasize that personal relationship and how special it all is and how special we feel within it. So I think it is a really good
Yeah.
metaphor. I think it is a really good way of describing it. But I was really struck when you kind of coined this phrase the other day, and I should have Googled it because I keep saying it's your phrase, but who knows if someone else has said it or not.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm not going to copyright it for sure.
in in terms of the hangover piece, I mean, the question is, how long does one stay hungover? What is the remedy for curing a hangover? It does wear off eventually, but you have this blistering headache. You usually want to be in the dark. You feel miserable. Your friends invite you out to brunch. They say, "Oh, have a mimosa, have a Bloody Mary. It's going to heal you up from the Saturday night before." There are all of these different ways of coping with our hangovers, but then we do eventually move on from them. The problem is, if we want to keep going with this metaphor, is that we keep getting drunk and we keep getting hangovers, and the hangover is usually worth the drunkenness the night before.
Well, this is in some ways, I think one of the points that Freud made when he described religion as one of his palliatives in civilization and its discontents, that religion functions in a palliative way, like a drink or a pill. It gives you a temporary sense of relief from the harshness of life. But like all things, if you stay where it takes you, or you overindulge in it, the cure becomes a poison in and of itself, and I think for a lot of people, what they're encountering really is the residual after effects of a heavily immersive religious experience, a palliative experience, because religion makes claims upon reality and gives you apparently a very clear and concise descriptor of what's really going on. And when you experience the downside of that, which I think happens to lots of people, and I think that's part of the whole deconstruction conversation, is, I think real theology and real religion begins in disappointment. I think that's actually where you start. I'm not sure that
you're discontent with your particular set of life circumstances. You want something different
because you've come to the end of them, and what's interesting is, I think the challenge is people, we sort of have a set of beliefs, an ideological grid. That's not what collapses really first. What collapses first is what happens to you in life. Your experience of reality begins to clash with your strongly held and
there's no way to reconcile that
belief
so
system,
then it's just
and you experience
dissonance.
a bit of a disconnect
Yeah,
between
absolutely.
your lived experience and the beliefs that you hold. I mean, it happens to
Absolutely.
people in all walks of life,
Yeah. Yeah.
politics and stuff. But with religion, I think there's a serious hangover that happens because we invest so much of our emotional selves in these ideas, and we're so convinced
Mm,
that we know what's really going on. And
yeah.
then we're told, when things fall apart, there's always this pressure to assume, it's like people go, oh, well, you're just sort of experiencing a lack of faith, or you don't have faith, or stuff
Yeah.
like that. And those things are thrown around so lightly without realizing the emotional impact and cost of something like that, to feel like, oh, I'm lacking
Yeah.
because this ideology doesn't work for me anymore.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
it's a
Yeah.
bit like the 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 collective both sigh of relief, but also um, incredible vacuum that was felt by people when the Soviet Union collapsed.
Hmm.
Not that everybody was a true believer, but to be a part of a system that held the world together for you,
Yeah.
and then for it to kind of implode and disappear before your eyes, either collectively or personally, that's a huge thing. And
Yeah.
that does create a psychic hangover. That's what I was talking about when I said an evangelistic hangover. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of people who grew up in kind of, I mean, we always say evangelistic churches, but I think modern Christianity is
Evangelical churches, you mean?
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's modern Christianity in its various forms, but it
Yeah.
seems to be happening a lot in evangelical churches because they function on a particular ideological spectrum
Yeah.
that doesn't really work in our world.
Yeah. Well, and going back to your comparison of the Soviet Union, there is this promised way of life. There is this promised utopia. And if you kind of join our ranks, you can be a part of this movement and have a better life. And I think essentially, obviously the Soviet Union fell because it wasn't that better life, and it was
Yeah,
actually dystopia, and it didn't work. And there was a lot of injustice that happened within it, and a lot of people that got forgotten and stepped on and stepped over. And I think that for the most part, pretty much that is kind of like the evangelical life cycle. If people make it to the end,
yeah,
it's promise of a better world, whether it's, this one or the next one. There's this kind of utopian experience,
yeah, yeah,
putting their best foot forward, and not even all the onus on, the church or evangelical. We have a part to play in that. Obviously,
yeah,
we engage in all sorts of functions that make us
yeah,
feel really good and make us feel like we're a part of something really big, and that we have found that thing in life that we want and that we need, and that can bring a sense of um, cohesiveness
yeah,
to what we experience and who we are and what we are. But as that starts to crack, and as it starts to speak less and less to the things that we actually really needed to speak to, as we're trying to make meaning in this life,
yeah,
yeah, then we kind of get sick from how drunk we've
yeah,
become. And that's sort of when the hangover appears, and it is this moment of just being dazed and confused, wanting to
yeah,
be left alone in the dark with your head under the pillow and the shades drawn. And there is a little bit of grief, there's a lot of confusion, and definitely a lot of pain.
yeah.
I think the hope, obviously, is that people would eventually move on from that hangover.
Yeah, well, it's like the philosopher Frederick Jameson talks about the utopian potential in catastrophe.
Yeah.
I talked about that a little bit in the pandemic. That
Hmm.
a catastrophe exposes what you always knew wasn't right about a situation,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily, and a utopia isn't necessarily a direction towards some imagined world. It's as much an exposure of what's
Absolutely.
not working in the present one. And I think you could talk about the evangelical catastrophe or the evangelical hangover, but in that
Mm.
catastrophe or in that hangover, the sort of personal spiritual hangover or catastrophe. There is a possibility, and the possibility is to see, to look at what you didn't look at before, or perhaps you see more clearly now, and then work towards a different reality.
Well, I think that's all we have to say about that.
Oh, all right then. Well, it was
I
lovely to
mean, do you
see
have
you.
anything else you want to say about the
No,
evangelical hangover?
not really. I'm drinking tea. So
Yeah, I mean, I know we said we just kind of wanted to make a drop in the bucket in terms of our thoughts today. So I think
a
this is
drop in
our
the
end.
martini glass.
Exactly, precisely. Drop in my martini glass. I wish I had one. I mean, this kind of conversation, especially this one today, isn't meant to sort of be definitive, but like most of what we do, but especially this one, I think it's giving people food for thought and helping them articulate some stuff that they've been feeling that they haven't been able to give language to or put words to.
Yeah,
And so maybe this idea of evangelical and we use evangelical because it, evangelicalism for the most part is the most probably one of the most polarizing horizons within Western Christianity today, but I think can really apply to, so I mean, liberal Christianity isn't a lot better. They're more liberal, but in terms of their theological drunkenness and hangovers,
yeah.
could very, very possibly be quite comparable. So anyway, that's us done and dusted for today. We hope everyone enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see you back next week.
Yep. Lovely to
Yeah.
see your face. See you soon.
Bye. Oh,
Bye.
and one other thing, we've started putting these conversations on YouTube. So if you do want to see our faces, you can head to our YouTube channel. See
I'm
you.
going to start wearing a bag over my head.
Shut up.
Bye.
Bye.